On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are talking about Star Trek Generations in our continuing Picard primer. We're also going to be listening to The Garage's new Star Trek Generations inspired song. All that right after this.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I am David C. Robertson.
How you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm all right. I'm sitting here in my The Cage t-shirt and my Japanese golden key, or gold key, I should say, Star Trek pajama pants, and I'm all trekked out, man.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
I've been on a real kick lately.
Me too, man. Picard has got me just like diving into Star Trek so hard. Obviously, this podcast has given me a lot of reason to rewatch some things, but I've been rewatching way more than we've been rewatching, and I'm just loving it. So let's dive in, because I know we're limited on time today, and only 9 days till Picard, so we got to get these last few Picard primer episodes out. So let's talk about Generations, my friend.
All right.
One of us should talk. All right. Well, obviously, this is a seminal work for Star Trek. It being the crossover. It's the crossover. This is me and you were both old enough that this was a huge deal for us.
It is, and it was, and this is the first movie I can remember negative reviews being a damper on my spirit.
And you've gone to now you do DC movies, the DC on Screen podcast, so that's like a regular part of your life now.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was. And
I'm just teasing you. Sorry.
No, I'm serious. It was.
Yeah.
That's a fine point. But it has turned around quite a bit in the last year or so. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Star Trek Generations, and it should have. This was like the thing about Star Trek Generations is there are things I absolutely adore about this movie, and then there are things that make no sense and annoy the hell out of me about this movie.
Interesting. And well, let's get into both things. Let's get into both. First off, something maybe I noticed it on a watch before, but maybe it's because I was trying to write the song about it this time, and this is giving away early what the song is about, but the Tully and Soren wanting to live in the Nexus, and then combining that with the story of Kirk in the Nexus and Picard realizing it's not real, and so and without time moving forward, it not mattering, that really brought this movie together in a way that I hadn't had in the past. I like the fact that kind of they're telling different stories, two different stories with Kirk and Picard, or Kirk and Picard experiencing the Nexus, and Tully and Soren experiencing the Nexus, but the way they experience it is saying how they believe, what they believe about life, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that a lot. Really enjoyed that. Me too. And even from Picard experiencing the Nexus, he looks at it, he sees that Christmas ornament, and he sees the explosion, and he has a sense of duty that will not allow him to retire to the Nexus. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then Tully and Soren clearly just wants to re-experience that one moment so bad that he wants to go back. But Kirk has a different reason, and it's that when he does that little jump, it doesn't feel the same because there's no danger, which I just love that Kirk and Picard have such different reasons that the Nexus doesn't make sense to stay in, because they're such different captains and different men. And I feel like in many ways in some of these movies, especially I don't know, First Contact and Insurrection, they try to make Picard more of a action hero.
Yeah.
And that was never Picard. And this movie...
They did it here too.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just, I like that I don't know. He's a man of duty. It's not like he never had fights. It's just like, particularly I think in Insurrection just feels a little more, I don't know. Like, at least in First Contact, it's like this very personal thing. He's fighting the Borg, and you can get like why, oh yeah, he wants to viscerally hurt them.
Well, for Insurrection, you can kind of chalk it up to like, oh, well, the planet's radiation is making them all feel a little special sporty and younger and aggressive. And
that's true.
Definitely feeling aggressive tendencies, Captain.
That's some solid headcanoning right there.
I mean, that's what they said in the movie. They actively said it like 3 times.
Yeah, no, you're right. Oh, I just meant why Picard is more adventurous.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't think that's what they said. They definitely have, but it makes a lot of sense. But sticking with this movie, because that's what we're talking about today. Like, let's, what were your positives? What are your positive takeaways?
I love the themes of regret, the themes of, it felt a lot like Wrath of Khan to me.
Absolutely.
In looking back on a life spent hopping galaxies, as they put it in Star Trek 2, and eschewing the family life. I love that. I love Kirk's regrets, and I love that they brought it together with Picard's regret. I love that this sounds awful, but I love that his family died. Like it. Yeah,
no, it makes this movie have a lot of weight, and it adds weight to his character going forward. And past now, we only get like 6 more hours of Picard. So like the things that this movie adds to his character, we're really going to get a chance to experience them in the new show, which I like. That scene where we find out his family died is why we rewatched this movie. We were talking on a previous podcast, and we were like, ooh, but his family dies. We need to watch that movie.
Yeah, his family dies here, and just the sadness of Kirk and Picard in this thing, like, is so good. And I sympathize.
I do too.
Soren as well. Like,
oh yeah. He's going through the same things, except he had a family and lost them. I wonder if they're saying something about that, because he had a family and lost them to the Borg, right?
Yes.
And then, so he wants that back. Kirk and Picard never had a family. And yeah, I love how consistent Kirk's character is. And I don't know who was responsible for kind of shepherding Kirk's character from the original series movies into this movie, but it feels so much like the Kirk we knew from Wrath of Khan.
Screenplay by Ronald D. Moore and Brandon Braga.
There you go. But I also think it's very likely Shatner himself, in the way that he played it. And even if he didn't change any of the lines, the way that he plays it is just so note perfect. And often when people return to a role after it's been a long time, like you can kind of tell, oh, he's not really him. He's not really Kirk anymore. But man, this is Kirk. This is just Kirk. And it's so good.
And it follows, it continues even into Kirk's death. It follows an arc for the character that has been there since the original series. In the original series, you get these little scenes of his longing to have something more than just the Enterprise. And especially like the Naked Time, where he's, actively crying and talking about, how he can't be with anyone because it's not proper for a captain to be with someone. And on through, like, it's one of my favorite things about Star Trek 5 is where he, sitting around the campfire, tells Spock and McCoy, men like us don't have families.
Yeah.
So I love to see the culmination of all that regret. I love to see how bored he is at the beginning of this film, where they're like, what have you been doing since retirement? And he just like, there's that beat and he says, keeping busy. Like, oh God, you haven't at all, have you? Yeah. Oh, you're being driven nuts, aren't you?
By the way, this is a complete offshoot, but anyone who follows my podcasts closely might have followed us onto the Watchmen podcast. And in the Watchmen, which is made by Lindelof, who loves Star Trek a lot. He made a big plot point out of a horseshoe and eggs. Like both of those things were recurring imagery throughout Watchmen. And I was watching Generations, and inexplicably, he's making eggs, and Kirk walks over to a little box and finds a horseshoe, like a diamond encrusted horseshoe, and then puts it back without explanation. And I was like, that feels like Lindelof was referencing this movie. And I don't know if that's true, but it seems almost too coincidental that someone who loves Star Trek would make a show and throw in those two elements from this weird scene that don't seem to go together. It was real strange. I loved it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true at all,
That's
but if
weird.
it is, I don't know. It was cool. Maybe I can tweet at Lindelof and see if that means anything. It's also a theme of like sort of being out of time and stuff in Watchmen too. So like there's all this stuff going on, and living a fake life and all that kind of stuff. Like there's all these themes in Watchmen that like are in that scene, and I was like, what is happening here? Anyway,
yeah, and I've loved that actually about the Kirk's Nexus scenes. I love that, like in his time off from Starfleet, Kirk like lives on a ranch and rides horses. Like I know that Shatner has a thing about horses and he loves the equestrian life, but
yeah,
and I'm sure that he had something to do with that.
Oh yeah, but no, he only agreed to do this movie if they would agree to rent his horses.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So all the horse scenes in this movie are apparently, I heard that on another podcast. So I'm referencing another podcast. I don't even remember which one, to be honest. But apparently those scenes are a way of him making extra money on this film by renting his own horses to the production.
I hadn't read that, but that's funny if that's true.
It's so funny. Oh, it was the Cracked podcast. They were doing an episode on weird ways people made money out of movies that like are not like, apparently Zack Snyder for the Superman movie, he bought a cornfield and actually grew a crop of corn and sold that corn because he wanted the cornfield to look a certain way. So he actually grew and sold the actual corn.
Dude, that guy's I don't even know, man. Yeah. But yeah, I love the idea that in his time off from Starfleet, Kirk is on a ranch riding horses. He's the cowboy we've all claimed he is all these years.
Yeah.
And I love how it ties in with Generations, how he's a man out of time. It's like he's in the Old West or something. I dig all that. Quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more thoughtfulness put into this movie than is often given credit by fans. But I do understand some of the stuff is like, what were you thinking here? This is stupid.
So I don't feel that way. I feel like this movie is pretty great. Nothing really makes me feel like this is stupid. So please enlighten me, because nothing hit me as like, this is dumb when I was watching this.
For me, that there's a huge bit. Well, okay, a lot of people will bring up all like the mystic, unexplainable Nexus mumbo jumbo.
Well, sure,
like that.
But that's just
I love that.
That's just a conceit.
That kind of shit.
Yeah, that's just a conceit. You have to buy into it, and then that's how it is. Like, that's just the rules of the game. You can't say, "Hey, we're gonna have this trippy Star Trek movie," and say, "Oh, but no trippiness in it." Mm-hmm. Like, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. So, what else might someone dislike?
Now, I myself find it a little problematic in terms of like why did the Klingons agree to let Picard go down to the planet's surface exactly? Like, what logic is there in that? Like,
it's a good question.
They're gonna beam over the Forge and Picard beams down to the surface?
Yeah.
But why?
I don't remember, honestly.
Well, no, because there's no reason. Like, Picard is like, send my first officer over and then you can have me. But first I must beam down to the surface. And they're like, okay. But why? Why would you let him beam down to the surface? That makes no sense.
I mean, I guess if it's just his condition on his own surrender. But yeah, I guess if he's a valuable enough target, which I think he would be as the flagship captain. But yeah. That's fine. I remember that scene, and it didn't really bother me that it happened. But yeah, maybe that was a little weak.
Yeah, and I didn't think about it for a long time, but then I was like, wait a minute.
All right. Well, that's a little bit of a flaw in the logic, but bad decision by the Klingons.
There is.
Well, I think the Klingons too. Like they're not invested in Tully and Soren's plan. They've already got. I don't understand. They've already got their. Tully and Soren kept the information. You remember he had that the information on the trilithium. And then he said he was going to beam down to the planet and send them the access codes. So I guess once he's down there, they don't really care if Picard tries to stop him. And it's probably good for them if Picard stops them because they don't really want to be a part of a huge genocide. That's not their goal. Their goal was the trilithium. So now that they have it, and now that the Federation knows they were involved, they probably would rather Tolian be stopped. So there's my headcanon.
There are little things that bother me, like Soren had tortured Geordi, and he makes a mention in the movie that his heart just wasn't in it, but they have like a whole deleted sequence where that line is explained, because the way he says it, you're like, oh, did he have a heart attack? What does he mean by that? Because that's like a very pointed statement, and we actually know within the confines of the edited movie what the hell Soren's talking about. Okay. That's
interesting.
Annoying.
That's bothersome, but nothing necessarily a flaw. It's just bothersome.
Right. Let's see.
Well, I know that like Ronald D. Moore and Brandon Braga have talked about how they think this wasn't as tightly written as All Good Things, and I think it's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
It's like a great end for the Enterprise D. I like that. I'm always it's a very memorable thing. Although it does remind me of a theory that I had earlier on. So in Wolf 359, I'm sorry, Best of Both Worlds, at Wolf 359, shortly after, Riker does a great job defeating the Borg. But almost every other time Riker takes over the ship that I've seen in this last little rewatch, something bad happens. And I think it's really funny that Riker takes over right before the ship crashes. That cracks me up.
This is something fans have pointed out for years. Every time Deanna Troi takes control of the ship, it explodes or gets destroyed. And it's the same here. She's in charge of that bridge when it goes.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Troi, they're both. That's funny. I didn't remember that she was in charge.
There are little weird like things, and people will point this out. And I think they actually did a pretty good job on this one. The Scotty and Chekhov were actually supposed to be Spock and McCoy.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And just like when you can hear almost all the lines, like when Kirk keeps getting up and down, and then
you can Scotty definitely see Spock
goes, "Is there something wrong with your chair, Captain?"
Yeah, that absolutely definitely feels like Spock.
And then Chekhov is telling people like they're nurses and stuff. You're like, what? Why would Chekhov be saying that?
That is very strange that they didn't rewrite those lines. That is silly.
But like the big criticism though was like, one, DeForest Kelley I think was too sick to be in the movie, and Spock or Nimoy was like, you could literally give these lines to anyone else in the movie or to anyone else in the original cast. I'm not coming back for that. And it did work fine, except for the fact that they forgot that Scotty had said what he did in Relics, where he thought that Jim Kirk had pulled the old girl out of mothballs to come and find him.
Oh, right. Well,
Scotty thinks that Kirk is dead. Why would he say that?
Well, they also might understand the Nexus a bit, because they did just pull hundreds of people out of the Nexus. So it's very possible that he could have just known what the Nexus is, and then when he gets saved, he goes, of course it would be Kirk saving me, even if it's just for a flash of a second,
They didn't know what the Nexus was.
Did they? How do we know that?
Picard didn't even know what it was until...
Well, Picard didn't, but he wasn't on the Enterprise B when it hit. But
they have files.
Well, sure, but and they find it out. Don't they find it out pretty quickly?
No.
Okay.
I mean, no, not. They never actually found out what the Nexus was during that 23rd century scene. Okay. They were just like, oh, we were just saving people from the energy ribbon, and they totally thought Kirk was dead when he got sucked into it.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine that if so, maybe it's not very common knowledge, but just headcanoning here, just headcanoning. Stay with me. I can definitely imagine that if that Nexus took a chunk of the ship, that like Picard's best friends might do a little more research on what that was that took him and be like, well, maybe there's hope he's out there, you know?
Well, no, that doesn't make any sense because it's right when they pull Scotty out of the transporter buffer in Relics. He says, "The Enterprise, of course. I bet Jim Kirk himself pulled me out of mothballs." Now, I've seen some people, some extended universe stuff say that he was disoriented. I've seen some extended universe stuff say that he never truly believed Kirk was dead because he'd seen him cheat death so many times, but he didn't have an actual solid footing for that belief.
Right. I still think that the line makes sense. Like, even if it just is a flash of a moment, if he's thinking that, I still think like he just, someone saves him and then he goes, hey, it's gotta be Kirk. Oh no, wait, he's dead.
I mean, headcanon aside, I think we can all agree it's just sloppiness.
Sure. It's sloppiness, but like it's a line from a kind of a joke that one of the characters said. So it's not like it's a plot point from an episode. I can forgive that. And like, I can forgive it in a way that like, it's just something he said as like an overstatement or like a serendipity that the Enterprise picked him up. But anyway, so you know, I just think all those don't sound like too big of flaws to me. Yeah. So I just really like this. I like this movie a lot.
The biggest one, and it's always going to be the biggest flaw for me on any time travel movie. Why didn't Picard and Kirk go back earlier?
Sure.
And how we know that all the subsequent movies haven't taken place in the Nexus?
Sure.
Did they choose to leave the Nexus? Is that how the Nexus works? Is like, oh, if you choose to leave, you can leave?
Yeah, I think that's what we have to assume.
Or is it, can you literally change time in the Nexus? Or is it, because for the first half of the movie, it kind of made you feel like it was just like a fantasy.
Yeah.
And then it turns out to be real somehow.
What do you mean it turns out to be real?
Well, because the Enterprise crashes and then the energy ribbon hits the planet and destroys and kills everyone. And well, now it's not.
Oh, because they
were
go
in the
back
Nexus
in time.
And they went back and stopped
it's weird. It is kind of strange that the Nexus also is a time machine. I'll give you that. I think that's the weakness of that plot point. It's like the Nexus is a place you go and you have dreams of whatever, but then there's that one throwaway line where Guinan's like, "Yeah, you can go anywhere you want. I've got this TARDIS here in the Nexus with me. Where do you want to go?" Yeah.
And, you know, I'm fine with there being like an echo of Guinan there in the Nexus or whatever. It's weird, but...
Yeah, but it's fun. It's better than some like faceless Nexus voice telling him what's going on. It's kind of nice to see Guinan.
I did enjoy Whoopi Goldberg being in the movie. I wish she'd been in the others.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's a... It's strange to me that Picard would be like, oh, well, cool. We stopped him, but now Kirk is dead. Well, but what if at what point did he leave the Nexus? Could he have gone back and redone it to where Kirk didn't die? Could he have gone back and stopped his family from dying?
Well, possibly, but he'd be risking those 3,000 people again. Because, it doesn't know. And who knows how time travel works in this particular scenario. Maybe there is a timeline now where 3,000 people died, including the Enterprise crew. And now they're just in a better timeline that he just created by saving everyone. So, who knows?
Yeah.
All right. So that's good. We're running low on time here. So you want to jump into any quotes or trivia?
Oh, there's a bit that that they always write in. and they wrote it into Unification and Relics, and they've done it here, is some iteration of I was doing this when your great grandfather was in diapers.
Right.
Every original series cast member says that except for McCoy. I think Admiral McCoy didn't say it in Encounter at Farpoint.
That seems like such a thing that he would say.
I know, but he didn't have to. Like, he wasn't in any situation that was actually like worrisome. He was just grumbling about how Data sounds like a Vulcan.
Yeah.
I love many of the lines. Like the dialogue in this film is is probably my favorite thing about this movie. Just there's so many good lines. We just don't have time for it.
The best line in the movie, in my opinion, is "Time is the fire in which we all burn."
Yeah, they say
it.
time is the fire in which we burn.
But which of course connects directly to the fact that Picard's family just died in a fire, and I don't even think we know that yet. When he says that, and Picard gets a like long look on his face, and we find it out in the next scene, and it's such a great, like, on a rewatch, it's such a wonderful, like, oh, that hits him in a totally different way than it hit me. It's so good.
Absolutely. And I love Data's arc in this thing, even though his emotion chip doesn't look anything like it did in the series. Whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's you could say I have a magnetic personality, Mr. Tricorder. Life forms, all of the life form song.
I like the life form song a lot.
And then, like, it does go from sort of broad, silly comedy to total fear and just all of those negative emotions, self-doubt, self-loathing, all of those issues that Data has throughout over the course of the movie is just fantastic. Spiner does such a fantastic job of drastically moving between emotions.
Yeah, it's really great. And it is in many ways, I liked the, what am I trying to say here? I like the, self-control they used in this movie to not make him a perfectly balanced, emotional being. It was like they knew they were going to get more. You know what I mean? And there's a certain confidence to this movie with the destruction of the Enterprise, and they're like, oh yeah, that's just how this one ends, and it just definitely feels like there's going to be more,
Yeah, there's a great bit where Data says, I have not been behaving like myself lately, and he's sad about this, and Geordi says, no, Data, you haven't. You've been behaving like a human. And just this little gleam of hope and happiness in Data from Geordi saying that.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite bits. I remember in the theater, this got such a huge laugh when we see when the Klingons see Beverly on Geordi's visor and says, "Human females are so repulsive."
Yeah, that's a great line. Great line.
And a great commentary here on TNG. He bathed, now he's roaming the ship. He must be the only engineer in Starfleet who doesn't go to engineering. Which is kind of unfair. He does spend a lot of time in engineering, but it's funny.
It's very unfair for his character, but it's still a fun line.
He does spend a lot of time outside of it too, though.
Yeah, but that's probably normal.
Do you remember seeing this in the theater? Do you remember Data saying, "Oh shit," and everyone cheering?
Vaguely, yeah. And of course, I like the after the ship is destroyed, the slow pan over to Data, and he's like, "Yes." It's great. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. Are there any trivia that we want to talk about before we shut it down?
There is a ton of trivia, and I'll sort of condense.
Throw a couple of the best ones at us
to what I remember. They were apparently really trying. They said the best possible poster. Ronald Moore explained, the best possible poster you could ever hope to have for this picture would show you the two Enterprises battling against each other. We all tried our best, but we were never able to come up with any scenario that made both crews look heroic. No matter how we played around with this thing, somebody was going to come off looking like the bad guy. So then we returned a little more solidly to the mystery that spans two generations idea that would allow Whoopi Goldberg as Guinan as the tie that binds the two. And then Brandon Braga were like, one of us just kind of threw out, what if we kill Kirk? And we all kind of looked at each other and said, wow, that would be amazing. And from that point on, Kirk's death became part of the fabric of our story. And as a big surprise to us all, there was never a moment where it really came into question. Which that's a big negative for a lot of people. Did you like Kirk's death?
Yeah, I did. Especially in the context of him leaving the Nexus. His death is, like, he died saving 3,000 people, which is like, it felt like a day in the life of Kirk, and it just finally, death caught up with him. And I liked that.
Was it 3,000? I thought it was...
Oh, it's probably like 300,000. I keep seeing 3,000. It's probably 3 million or 300 million. I don't know. It's a planet.
It was 12... Yeah, I thought it was 12 million. I think one of the big flaws is that we never actually get to meet or see the people of Viridian 3. We don't... Or Viridian 2 or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
However many people were supposed to be saved by this.
That's fair, but I also think there's not much room.
And, a lot of people say that he should have died on the bridge of a ship somewhere. And, the big joke is captain of the bridge on the captain. But I always liked Kirk's death. And I like the fact that we never met the people because Kirk never met the people. And Kirk is the kind of guy who would sacrifice himself for people he never saw or never met.
Yeah, for sure. He does it twice in this film. And people say he should die on the bridge, but I think that it actually makes a lot of sense for him to die on a planet. He spent a lot of his time on the planets, like he was the guy who would go down into the adventure. He's not if Picard dies, which he probably will in 3 seasons of Picard, he needs to die on the bridge of a ship, I think.
Yeah.
I agree. He almost never left the bridge, unless he was taken off the bridge by an alien presence. Like he's a bridge type captain, whereas Kirk often went down to the planet. Mm-hmm. I think it would have been nice if he died saving the Enterprise. Like that would have been nice because that's always been his love.
Yeah, but that would have been a nice bookend since he lived by destroying the Enterprise at one point. Yeah,
it would have been nice to see him die and lie on the ground and watch the new Enterprise flying through the air or something, see it flying through the atmosphere as he died, dying to save the Enterprise. Mm-hmm. I could see there being some poetry with the ship, but I don't mind that he died on the planet.
Yeah, it's not bad. By the way, did you realize that this movie took place a year after All Good Things?
I did not.
Yeah, they added consoles and stuff. The actual bridge is bigger. They took out those side compartments and stuff and added a wraparound console all the way around.
Neat.
They actually did it up.
Refits,
they did it up.
Refits can do a lot of things. Think about that Discovery Enterprise. They can change all kinds of shit.
It's gone too far already.
All right. Well, I think that you got any other couple more big trivia pieces?
Malcolm McDowell thought the script was shit. I thought that was funny.
That is funny.
His nephew is Alexander Siddig, Bashir.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Oh, and there was an alternate cut where he that did not play well with test audiences. And in that version, Kirk just got shot in the back.
Oh, yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, and McDowell was like, I want to be the man who kills Kirk. I'm going to be the man that pulls the trigger. And then,
what a weird thing to want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him, but...
Right, it's an epic thing to say, but
Yeah, and this is the main guy from A Clockwork Orange, too. So, I mean, of course, you get to be that guy and the guy that kills Captain Kirk, of course.
All right, well, I think that's it for us discussing this episode. Now we're going to play a song from my new album that I'm working on called Earl Grey Hot by The Garage. It's going to be an album of Picard songs based on these 10 Picard episodes that we are, Picard's episodes and movies that we are discussing. And this is one of my favorites that I've written so far. I've probably said that a few times because I think I'm learning how to write songs based on this and really connect it to real emotion and real story of my own life. And like, I don't know, I'm really enjoying it. And this,
I thought you were going to say because you're incredibly narcissistic.
Yeah, that too. No, that's just your thoughts about me. It's fine. It's fine. But no, this one, I took the idea of that I mentioned up at the top of time being the thing that fuels these men. The consequences that Picard needs in his decision making, and the adventure that Kirk needs, and the hook of the song is, some say time is a fire in which we all burn, but I know time is a fire that burns within me, and that was kind of the hook, and then I went from there, and it even starts out referencing Tully and Soren, not by name, but you'll hear it.
Yeah,
this is
it's a good song.
Thanks, man. So I hope you guys like it. This is we only got 2 more weeks of this and 2 more songs, and then we'll be watching the actual Picard season. So that's exciting. So we'll be back soon with with First Contact. See y'all soon. Peace.
Live long and prosper.
A man who planned to live forever. He'd give anything to cease the march of time. Searched his whole life for a moment he'd already lost, so he lost so much more. Some say time is the fire in which we all burn, but I know time is the fire that burns within me. What makes a moment worth holding on to is that you can't. Love and joy can be ever fleeting, and your happiest days can seem dead and gone. But if you hold too tight, you'll miss them next time they come. I've known loss, that's the cost of being open-hearted. And there are days to which I would return. Oh, but a life without pain is a life without joy. It's just a dream. Some say time is the fire in which we all burn, but I know time is the fire that burns within me. What makes a moment worth holding on to is that you can't. Love and joy can be ever fleeting, and your happiest days can seem dead and gone. But if you hold too tight, you'll miss them next time they come. Is now. This is the moment that we know a thing about. The past is just dreams and pictures in our mind that we cherish over time, but it's gone, and you can't get it back. All we have is now. Let tomorrow worry for itself. Just live each day and seize them as they come, and be just who you want to be. tomorrow's uncertain. All we have is now. To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at Star Trek Ucast on Twitter, or search for the Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. And if you want to hear more from David C. Robertson, search for the DC On Screen podcast in your podcast app now, or go to maladjusted.tv for his comedy sketches. If you want to hear more from me, Matthew Carroll, search for the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or the Orville Universe podcast in your podcast app, or check out my music. Just search for Matthew Carroll wherever you listen to music.